This is fantastic. So Arthur White, I'm Director of External Affairs with Detroit Opera, but I also have become an avid tablescaper in recent years. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. Yes, thank you. And at the age of 20, I met my spouse and partner of the last 37 years, Everton Swearing. He's right in the back with the tie, black tie on. Thank you, Everton. Everton is the E in A&E Décor, so I could not do any of this without him. Now, back in the 80s, we moved into a condominium which sat right on Lake Michigan in Chicago, and we loved this place. It was right on the lake. We would watch the sunrise every morning. Now, the only problem with this condo, it was 940 square feet, so it meant that we could not entertain there. And we entertained, like many people in Chicago who lived in apartments and condominiums, we entertained in restaurants. And so every Friday night, we would hold court at this restaurant called Trascas. And we would push our family and our friends, people we wanted to know better. We would push them to Trascas every Friday night. And that is how we entertained successfully for 20 years. We are old. Now, in 2010, Everton accepted a position in automotive, and so we moved to Detroit. And so now we had to learn, first of all, we were excited, first of all, to have this fantastic house. We moved into Palmer Woods, though some of you might know that historic neighborhood. And so coming from a 940 square feet condo to this 6-bedroom house, we thought we had moved into the Kennedy compound at Hyannisport. And so we were nervous. So we said, we need some help trying to decorate all those rooms. So I got the chance to meet who ends up turning out to be my mentor, Miss Loretta Crenshaw, who's here somewhere. Loretta Crenshaw, fantastic. Oh, she's right in the back. Fantastic designer. But as we began working together, first of all, she turned our house into a palace, which we love. But we began to realize that she was a life coach. And so she began to teach us the art of entertaining. How do you set up a drink station? How do you organize a strolling buffet at your house? How do you work with private chefs who may come in and cook for you and your guests? How do you direct servers, whether it's for a cocktail party or maybe a full sit-down dinner? Who does all those fantastic floral arrangements that you see on TV or in hotels or in magazines? Who does all that stuff? Well, she began to teach us how to do those things. And we must have been pretty quick studies because before you knew it, our house started to become party central. We began to entertain the mayor and our congressman and our lieutenant governor and a board at the opera and Gucci executives and all kinds of interesting things, fundraisers for some important work that is being done here in Detroit. And we have loved every minute of it. Now, we produced our first book, Distinctive Decor, about tablescaping. I had never considered myself particularly a tablescaper. I mean, I would do Thanksgiving, we would do Thanksgiving, maybe one or two, luncheons or dinner parties throughout the year. But this desire, this love for tablescaping was really born out of the pandemic. We had been in shutdown, you all know as well as I do, for over a year. Pretty much isolated. It was me and Everton pretty much during that whole year. We didn't kill each other, which was fantastic. Actually, if anything, our relationship grew even more fantastic. But anyway, it was now a year. The CDC had come out because they'd had the vaccines and the boosters had been released, and they said you can now meet in groups of 10. And I think the desire to reconnect with friends and neighbors and coworkers and all that was so great. So we did our very first dinner party on Thursday night. I'll never forget it. And we invited 10 people over. That's the maximum number we could do. And then on Saturday, we invited another 10. And then on Monday, we invited another 10. Probably not exactly what the CDC had in mind about social distancing. Fortunately for us, we never did have a super spreader. But these dinners continued and have continued all the way through to today. So last year, for example, we did 30 of these dinners, whether they were in our dining room. If we did something bigger, we would take all the furniture out of our living room and set up one grand banquet table, or we might do a lot of entertaining in the garden. Everton has our backyard, our garden, looking like the Palace of Versailles. All of my dinners look fantastic because he has made the garden so fantastic. So that's how we've been entertaining. And so while I am certainly not the last word on tablescapes, I have made so many boneheaded wrong decisions over these few years that if I could keep any of you from making any of those mistakes, I will be completely thrilled. So those are some of the dinners we started to do. Actually, that's our living room there in all its glory. So let's talk about 30 dinners. So often when people hear that I have done 30, or we have done 30, I keep saying it's we have done 30 dinners, I couldn't do it by myself. They say, you must have like 30 sets of china. Well, that exactly is not the case at all. And so what we have done is I have taken a handful of elements which represent their color, patterns, and textures. And I've taken these elements and I basically am constantly reshuffling them and representing them so it looks like it's something new. And so that's why even folks who may have come to our house many times may say, you have a new look. They don't really realize that probably 80% of what's on the table they have seen in some other form or fashion. They just didn't notice it because I know how to play up one particular thing or whatever the drama might be on the plate. And so I'm constantly shuffling those elements. All right, so let's talk about this. So often people will say, well, how do I start? I think since the pandemic, I did mention this, since the pandemic, pretty much we worked, Everton and I, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And then when when the weekend would come, we would entertain and go to restaurants. That's where we would hang out with our friends. Well, since the pandemic, we have really started primarily entertaining at home. And the reason why that is we began to realize, we began to realize that we could curate a much better experience for our family and our friends at our home. Not because we are so fantastic and so great, but because it takes me 2+ hours just to set the table or even create the space in which we are going to welcome our family, friends, loved ones. And so likewise, I think now what we're seeing for us since the pandemic, we are spending more time at home. I almost hardly go to restaurants, but we have to bring in, of course, all kinds of chefs to come and help us, although Everton is a great, fantastic cook himself. So I believe this pandemic has changed us, and I think you see people now wanting to do more and more at home. So people always ask me, where do I start? How do I start? It's very simple. You start with some white plates. That's all you need. That's how I started. I had a set of white plates. I was telling you, I did a lot of Thanksgivings and formal dinners. So I had this wonderful porcelain set with the white, with the gold trim. But maybe you don't want to do all that fancy. I'm much more contemporary and cool. So maybe you might want to start with a whole white set of plates, just plain plates. But you get the whole set. Don't just get the entree plate or the salad plate. Get the whole set because the white ends up becoming your utility set. Because I talked about the drama. I talked about those 5 elements that I do where you start adding the drama to the table. You're going to add that drama on top of this white. The white is going to be pretty much the foundation of your set. Now, you may have some other sets. I have a few other sets as well. Maybe you have your wedding china that you love. That might have this fantastic pattern, but maybe you can only use that once in a while. Maybe, for example, my most fantastic pattern is a Copeland Spode, which is nearly 100 years old. It's cobalt blue with this, you've probably seen the earlier picture, with the gold rim. Well, I can't use that regularly. That is so distinctive. I only pull that out on special occasions. But I really lean particularly on my white plates. Whether it's my formal look, if I'm going to go with the gold rim, or I also have silver ones. You might have a silver one maybe, or just the plain white plates. Okay? So let me, let's see. So we should talk also, I should say, as I said, the white plates are the utility, and you put the drama basically around that. The drama, it's like a movie. And so your dramatic parts, which are the colors, patterns, and textures, it's like a movie set. That's the Julia Roberts and the Denzel Washingtons and the Viola Davis. But the white plates are sort of your supporting cast. That's your Joe Pesci's and your Whoopi Goldbergs. So think of it in that term. That's how I usually see things. So this is an example where I did a black and white look. I was doing a soup party in Palmer Woods. We have like a dinner club in Palmer Woods, and it was my month to host. And so we were going to do this soup party in February. All I had was this white and black striped salad plate. And so I thought, so we just built the whole look around that salad plate. We still have our regular white utility plate there. You see our entree plate. We added the salad plate, added a white soup bowl, threw a black charger on under there, a black and white monogram napkin, a white placemat there, and I had some other things with flatware and all that. But pretty much, this all was born around that salad plate. So if you're looking for a way to mix things up, give some drama to your plates or to your sets, go out and look, whether it's antique shops or eBay or live auctioneers, estate sales. Look for some fantastic salad plates. They're a lot cheaper. You don't have to necessarily break the bank or buy a whole set because you got your utility as your full set. All right? Very good. Okay, we're moving right along here. All right. Now, when I sit down to do a project, there are basically 3 words that are in my mind, and that's how I know I can stay on target. And those 3 words, I remember them by their acronym, STB, and not to be confused with STD, sexually transmitted disease. We don't want that on the plate or on the table. But the first one is style. So the first thing I do when I know I'm going to do, if you came to me and said, Arthur, we want you to do a Sunday brunch in the garden in July. So I know right away it's going to be casual. It's going to be light, not too heavy, not too dark. Now, if they came back and said, the mayor is coming, for example, then I would probably add some silver or some flourish to that, or maybe some crystal, that sort of thing. So before I even start, I have an idea of what this is going to look like when it's over. It doesn't mean I have specifically what I'm going to use, but I have the idea of what this is going to ultimately look like. That's how I start. The reason why that's important is because you won't start adding things. There's so many choices to make. You won't start adding things that maybe don't necessarily go, or you might take yourself off your track. So kind of have an idea of where this is going, and that'll kind of keep you in the guardrails, all right? All right, okay. The next thing is theme. Now, when I began doing this right around the pandemic, I never particularly worked with theme. I was kind of taught, hey, you put beautiful things on the table in an elegant way, and you're going to have a beautiful, elegant table. And I completely agree with that to this day. But I happened to watch another designer who was talking about tablescaping, and he said he believed that you should lean into your theme. He believed leaning into your theme gives your table focus and direction. I'm going to say it again. It's like church. Lean into your themes. It will give your table focus and direction. What did he mean by that? I had no idea what he meant by that. But I figured it out. What it means is, anytime we sit down to do the table, you have the holidays coming up, maybe you're doing something for your anniversary, maybe you're doing a pizza party for your kids. You have 9,000 decisions to make. Do I use a tablecloth? Do I use a runner? Do I use a placemat? Do I use vases for the flowers? Do I use vases? Do I use a planter? Maybe I put individual, arrangements of flowers at each seat. What glasses should I wear? Should I use stemware? What napkins? What color napkins? 9,000 decisions to be made. When you lean into your theme, every decision I make is driving that theme. And if it's not driving the theme, I don't do it. I'm not saying you have to do every single thing, but that's one of the approaches. The minute I started leaning into my theme is one of the reasons why I'm standing here in front of you today. Because all of a sudden, the reaction to some of the things we were doing started to be quite significant. Thousands and thousands of folks were starting to weigh in on some of the things that we were doing. So leaning into your themes. And so in the beginning, I used to often get, people would say, oh, your table's beautiful, your table's lovely, and I appreciated all of those comments. But as I started leaning into my theme, instead of responses, I started getting reactions. I started getting, ooh, oh, ah. And then I started getting yummy sounds. I love that. I wanted to do the yummy sounds. I started getting these yummy sounds, and I started privately counting the yummies as I would do my tables. You didn't want folks to know you were counting the yummies. They might give you some false yummies just to be nice. But I wanted the real yummies. And so I would start to count them out. And so we had done Easter back in April of this year at our home. And we welcomed a whole bunch of folks over. I was never really a bunny rabbit Easter person. It just wasn't my thing. There's nothing against those who love that. It just wasn't me. And so I said, we're going to go with an Easter peacock. An Easter peacock. And so I got all these peacocks and put them on the table. And instead of Easter eggs with the bunnies, we had peacock eggs. It was fantastic. I decorated the table, and everyone came in. And the comments, they were great. They were like, Arthur, fantastic. A triumph. Best work you've ever done. Not a yummy amongst them. But that's all right. That's all right. I got something for him next year. I don't want to put out the secret here, but it probably has to do, it's probably going to rhyme with the word penguin, just so you know. So we got something special for the next year. Leaning into your themes. We'll talk a little more about what that means and what that looks like. The next thing is balance. Balance is probably the most difficult element. It's the one I struggle with everything, but I really struggle with balance. And as I've I look at so many tables every day, mostly to steal some good ideas. But as I look at so many tables, I realize we often go wrong on the balance. The balance, what does that mean? Balancing contrast. How do you balance contrast on the table? Does balancing contrast mean that if you're doing a black and white look, if 50% of the table is black and 50% of the table is white, then you have balance? Is that what that means? It could mean that, but not necessarily. Balance means that once your table is done, whatever your theme is shining brightly on your table. There is nothing on that table that is either upstaging or undermining your theme. That often is where the problem is when we're doing our table. So trying to look really critically and honestly when we look at our table, is this table really in balance? A few years back, Ralph Lauren issued these blue-white mandarin plates, one of those chinoiserie patterns. And he did a whole line of them back in 2007. And so our designer, Loretta Crenshaw, took one of our rooms in the house. We have a Jack and Jill. She took that room and she did it all in chinoiserie black and white. She took the pattern from Ralph Lauren and she threw it in the curtains. And then she threw it on the duvet on the bed. And in the bay window there, she littered it with blue and white vases in jars, which were fantastic. It was one of my most favorite rooms in the house, decorated. And so when Christmas came, all she did was add red to that blue and white. She threw a red throw across the bed, and she added some red ornaments to one of the blue and white bowls, and she put ribbons around some of the other things in the bay window. And so the room sang Christmas. It was just blue and white with this red. So when Christmas came last year, we had to host some professors at U of M. I said, I do a Ralph Lauren table look, which you'll see in just a bit if you haven't already seen it. I said, I'm going to do what Loretta did and add red to that table. So I got up early, I set my blue and white, I started to add red, I added some napkins, a goblet, that sort of thing, and I stepped back to the entrance of the room. Every time I finish the table, which usually takes me hours, I step back to the entrance of the room and I look in as if, what would I think if I were stepping through this room for the first time? That's the kind of thing I play with, the game I play with myself. And I stepped back and I went, the room is off. I should also mention, often if the balance is correct, you know right away. You love it right away. If you have to go, yeah, it's probably wrong. Your balance is probably off. So I stepped back and said, this doesn't look right. So I couldn't figure out what it was. So one of the things, this might help you too, one of the things that helps me, if I'm wrong or if I'm off track, I never see it with my naked eye. I always see it like in pictures. So I'll take a picture of the room and I'll study the picture. And somehow that lens usually, hones right in on what it is my issue is. So I took a picture of the room and I began to look at it and I realized instantly what the problem was. I did not have a Ralph Lauren blue and white plus Christmas red table. I had a red, white, and blue table, the same colors. I had a July 4th table, which is not what you want during the holiday season, right? And so I was able to fix that. So balance. Be very careful when you start playing with your colors and your balances, because you might think you're saying one thing, but you might indeed be saying something else, especially if folks who come to your home. Okay. So those are three things. They're usually in my mind: style, theme, and balance. All right? Now, monogram napkins. Now, I was never particularly interested or a fan of monogrammed napkins. And then one day, I was gifted some monogram napkins. I always thought, monogram napkins, they're so frilly and they're probably so expensive and they're just not very masculine for me. So I thought, I'm not doing monogram napkins. I got a set, I should say, of monogram napkins like this, and I began to change my tune on the monogram napkins. And I wonder if you don't do them all, you might consider changing your tune on the monogram napkins. One of the things, First of all, we started, what they did was in our monogram, they took the A from my name and the E from Everton's name, and they kind of entwined it there. And I started to use it on my tables. And as I was publishing some of my stuff, people started to know, oh, that's that guy from Detroit, that A and E, because it began to make my table very distinctive. When folks would see my napkins right away, they would know that that's that guy from Detroit. And so I liked that kind of crest. It's like having our own crest, or maybe your own crest. So then I thought, oh, that's pretty neat, isn't it? And then I found out they weren't nearly as expensive as I thought they were. You could buy the same plain white napkins for the same price at Williams-Sonoma. Nothing wrong with Williams-Sonoma, but it's not as expensive as you might think. The third reason why I believe in monogram napkins, there are times when maybe your theme, I did a table, I think it's in here, that was turquoise. We have these turquoise food dogs on the wall in the dining room, and so I think it might have been Loretta or someone who said, you should do a turquoise look. I said, since you have these turquoise food dogs, I thought, great. So the only thing I had that was turquoise, I had a salad plate. Remember I talked about that salad plate? I had a turquoise salad plate. That's all I had. I thought, how do I reinforce this color on the table? It might be your napkin. So if you have a particular, maybe it's a color or a pattern or some other kind of theme or a texture, maybe your ticket might be in the monogram napkin. That will help reinforce that color or that pattern, all right? So yeah, I'm a big, so now we have them in all the colors. I don't use them every single time, but you'll see in a good deal of our pictures, you'll see that A and E. Sometimes we'll do our last initials, my last name and his last name, S and W, but I've become a big fan of monogram napkins. All right. Another thing, menu cards. Every time, have you ever been in restaurants where the menu card would be on a little piece of, sometimes it might sit on your plate, and then you have to move the plate to start eating, and then all of a sudden you can't find the card and all that. And so I began, I'm trying to think it was Connie, is Connie here? Connie Taylor, it was right there. It was Connie Taylor who said to me one day, why don't you frame your menu cards? And I love it. And now I frame pretty much all of my menu cards. What's great about it is it sits right there. You can follow all the courses without having to shuffle around trying to figure out where you drop that card. And it just kind of stands there and waits for you to need it. I just thought that was really classy and cute. So menu cards is one thing we do. Also place cards. Even if you may only have 4 folks, I love using place cards. When folks come into to the room and see their name, there's a certain sense of like this dinner or this event is for me. People love that. So I often will use place cards and name cards, even if I'm only doing 4 or 5 folks. All right? Very good. Let's see. We're moving right along here. Floral arrangements. Now, of course, we all probably know one of the most important elements of the table, often the floral arrangement, is often the centerpiece of the table. And I'm very, very fortunate that Everton Swearing has the green thumb because I would kill even dandelions. And so he often does all of our, sometimes we'll farm some things out if we have a real big project, but often it's Everton who will pull all these fantastic things together to give us wonderful centerpieces. And this was a sort of a buffet we were doing at the house. And so it was tricky, I was on a couple of the morning shows recently, and we were talking about this, about floral arrangements, how big do they go? So typically if on a buffet like this, I'll go bigger. Something this big would be too large at the table if we were sitting, because you wouldn't be able to see across the, I always say Aunt Harriet or Cousin Julie. But the floral arrangements are the central part and really kind of help set the tone of this particular dinner. And I think you'll see some of that when we do our reveal. So there you are. Okay, floral arrangements. Okay. Now another thing, remember I talked about that turquoise look. This is an example where I only think I started out was this turquoise plate, and then I put it in the napkin, and then before you knew it, I found some vases, and I threw some turquoise candles, and then I saw some seahorses at the store, and I went and got those. But one thing you might want to do, sometimes I'll put that look in gold. And maybe to switch it up, since it's the same look, sometimes I'll put it in silver. So that might be another way that you might want to mix up. Maybe you have 2 or 3 favorite settings you have at home. Maybe mix them up like that. Maybe put it in a different setting. Gives it a totally different feel. People won't even remember. They'll be like, is that new? Even though they may have seen that look once or twice before. All right? Another thing. Find out what it is that you love and use it. And so when I was growing up, I had never seen a cream soup bowl. These are those soup bowls with the 2 handles, right? I had never seen those before until, as an adult a few years back. And when I saw them, I thought, wow, how fantastic. It had such a great symmetry on the plate, almost like a pyramid. Well, as I began to investigate, I realized that they had fallen out of fashion by the late 40s and 50s. And so now they don't really make them. And so I was like, great for me. So as I started to travel around and go to estate sales and go online, maybe it's eBay or live auctioneers, folks are just getting rid of these. Well, I love these. So I have more cream soup bowls than you can imagine in all different versions, colors. Sometimes I use them I'll use them casually out in the garden, but that's one of the things that I just happen to love. And so find out what you love and use it. So you will often see a cream soup on my table. The other thing is I loved these Tiffin Franciscan glasses, which had come out. Love the Gilded Age time period, and these glasses were made around that time. Well, these weren't made literally, but this style had been started back during the Gilded Age, and so I believe our glasses are probably 1930s, 1940s. But I've just loved them, and again, I started to collect them because most people have disregarded them as being old and out of step. We want to be cool. Well, I happen to love them, and so you will often see those on my table as well. So find out whatever it is you love and put it on your table, because and don't just wait for the holidays, whether it's Thanksgiving or Hanukkah or Christmas or whatever it might be. Don't wait. We use our stuff all the time because you're going to end up saying, "I'm waiting to use this for that special occasion." Special occasion is never going to come. You'll probably end up passing away, and I'll get them at the next estate sale. So thank you. All right. So do what you want. Okay, I wanted to talk also about, I have a question for you all. Tablecloths. To tablecloth, I was in a big discussion with someone online with one of the Tablescape sites about tablecloth. I'm curious, how many people here use a tablecloth the majority of the time if they're going to entertain at the table? Most of us. Are there people here who never use a tablecloth? A few of you. I thought there'd be more, just a few of you. So I was going to ask you, is there a particular, do you want to tell us why?
Yeah, because I have a son that's messy.
Well, some might say use the cloth. That'll protect it. Are you trying to protect the table?
I don't want to do the laundry.
I hear you. Okay, so often when you hear people talk about to tablecloth or not, you'll often hear people say, well, I use a tablecloth because I want to protect my table. But I want to, water stains and scratches and all that. Or they may say, I have such a beautiful table, I wouldn't dare cover it with a tablecloth. And so, fortunately, in our particular case, we have a Baker Louis XVI table, and we had glass made for it. And so, for me, the only thing that's going to drive whether or not I use this tablecloth or not, does anybody tell, based off what you've heard me say, anybody have any idea what would make me decide to tablecloth or not? What's my theme? You're exactly right. If I was going to do a black and white look, a formal look on the table, I don't want my brown, I love my brown table, it's sort of like a honey brown table, but I don't want anything that's going to undermine or upstage that theme. So that's me. All right. So our final challenge is we are 2 weeks away from the holiday season. 2 weeks away. Yep, as you said, just 2 weeks. We are just 2 weeks away. You've probably seen all the Netflix shows. You're probably caught up on all your shows by now. Take one evening. Maybe it's a night after everyone's gone to bed, or maybe you're going to get up early before everyone else gets up. Pull that look out that you have planned for the holiday season and do a little check. Check out, how is your style? Is everything in line? Is there anything out of line? How's your theme? Maybe you don't have a theme. Maybe you don't need a theme, but maybe you might need to get a theme. Maybe there's more you could be doing to lean into that look that you have established. Take a look. Maybe that balance is off. You were always bothered by those bowls. You were never really 100% pleased with them, but it's what you had and you just went with it. Maybe this is the time of the year to maybe rethink those bowls. Maybe that tablecloth is throwing off the room or maybe that tablecloth is fighting something else on the table. Here's the time to take a critical look. You have 2 weeks to make a change. It doesn't necessarily mean that change has to be a financial burden. It might just be a matter of you making a different choice. Try it out. Look to see if those 3 things are in line. Who knows? You might hear some new yummies at your table this holiday season. Thank you all so much.